Hello, everyone. Welcome to this yet another session. Today, we are going to discuss the poem by Robert Seymour Bridges, A Passerby. This is Robert Bridges in the year 1912. So, a little bit about the writer Robert Bridges. He lived from the year 1844 to 1930, and till the year 1882, he trained and worked as a doctor. But later, because of a lung failure, he stopped practicing and he focused his entire energy and his life towards writing, to the vocation of writing. He's known as a classicist who experimented with 18th century classical forms. As you're all familiar, Victorian era, where they kind of imitated the classical ideals, classical forms, classical structures. Like that, we have a classicist who lived during the early modernist period in literature, who experimented with the traditional classical forms. He never deviated from the classics. He stick on to the classical forms, and he was yet known as a classicist. Robert Bridges was nominated and selected as the Poet Laureate of the United Kingdom in the year 1930, a position which he retained till the end of his life, till his death in the year 1930. His out of his works, The Testament of Beauty, published in 1929, is acknowledged as his masterpiece, and he may be considered as last of the great Victorians. In his poetry, we can find beautiful descriptions of English landscapes, clear streams, gardens, songs of birds, a clear Victorian picture, right? So that is what Robert Bridges was about. And now this is the poem, A Passerby. It is written by Robert Seymour Bridges. And in this poem, he's actually imagining a ship that is sailing away, and he's wondering about the direction of the ship and the beauty and the majestic nature of the ship beautifully. Words, we can clearly relate to the language and words and the selection, the vocabulary, and everything that is um, alludes to a traditional classical form of language. So I'll read the poem once, then we can discuss it. Whither, O splendid ship, thy white sails crowding, leaning across the bosom of the urgent west, that fearest nor sea rising, nor sky clouding, whither away, fair rover, and what thy quest? Ah, soon, when winter has all our veils oppressed, when skies are cold and misty, and hail is hurling, wilt thou glide on the blue Pacific, or rest in a summer haven asleep, thy white sails furling? I there before thee, in the country that well thou knowest, already arrived am inhaling the odorous air. I watch thee enter unerringly where thou goest, and anger queen of the strange shipping there. Thy sails for awnings spread, thy masts bare. Nor is aught from the foaming reef to the snow-capped grandest peak that is over the feathery palms more fair than thou, so upright, so stately, and still thou standest. And yet, O splendid ship, unhailed and nameless, I know not if aiming a fancy I rightly divine that thou hast a purpose joyful, a courage blameless, thy port assured in a happier land than mine. But for all I have given thee, beauty enough is thine. As thou aslant with trim tackle and shrouding, from the proud nostril curve of a prow's line, in the offing scatterest form, thy white sails crowding. Okay, so the poem is divided into three stanzas. We can clearly say that it looks like the appearance is giving the idea that it is a traditional poetic structure with three stanzas. The first stanza, he begins with the image of a splendid ship with the white sails crowding. So, white sails is actually the sheet of canvas that we use to cover the mast so that they can easily help in the direction. The numerous white sails gathered together like a crowd. Poet is watching a magnificent ship that sails before him. And he's wondering to which direction is this ship going? Is it towards the west direction? And the ship appears to be fearless, to be not so afraid of the rising sea and the clouding skies. It is fearless. It is so determined to go towards the direction that it is aiming. And it is asking, the poet is asking the ship, whither away, to go towards the direction, my fair wanderer. And what is your quest? What are you searching for? Is it for a meaning? Is it for something specific? Is it for some person? Is it for some object? Soon, very soon, the winter season will be oppressing our vales, our valleys. Everywhere we inhabit, our places will be covered with winter. The winter season will be there very soon. And when the skies will be cold and misty, and there will be the severe monsoon season with hailstorms, frozen rain will be throwing everywhere around. And even at that time, will you be slightly, smoothly gliding away on the blue Pacific Ocean? Or will you be resting in a summer haven asleep somewhere far beyond the tropical lands where we can see the white sails furled, rolled up, which means the ship is resting now? So, will you be resting during the winter season or will you be passing over the blue Pacific Ocean? So, the first stanza, Bridges, is talking about the direction in which the ship is sailing, and it is sailing in a way which looks like it is fearless, it is completely unafraid of anything, the rising ski or the clouding skies or the severe winter season that is way ahead of the ship. And now the poet moves towards asking about or wondering at the beauty, at the majestic nature of the ship. And he's describing that I am right at there, at the port before you, in the country that well thou knowest. Our country is very well familiar with you and me, and now I have already arrived at the port, and I can inhale the very unpleasant smell, the odorous air that is going on around, and I can watch you entering the port unerringly, without any mistake, very accurately, without any errors. You have a clear sense of direction where you're going. You're very well clear about that. And you're anchoring like the queen of the strange shipping right at the port, right at the right place. You are anchoring right there. Your sails for awnings spread. Awnings are the sheets of canvas. They usually the ship, the people will spread over the ship's deck to avoid sun or any further rain. So the awnings are already spread, the white sails are already rolled up, it's already furled up, and now the masts are bare, the masts are empty. Now the ship is at rest. It is already anchored right at the port. It entered the port without making any mistakes. And even then, there are so many other sights like the forming reef and the snow covered Grandes Mountains and feathery palm trees, which might appear more fairer than the ship, but even then, beyond everything, beyond every rare, beautiful sights that are lying beside, here we have a magnificent ship standing upright, so stately, and thou standing there. You're standing there like a marvelous item, like a splendid item. You're standing there, even when we can see very rare, beautiful natural sights over there, like the forming reef, like the feathery palm trees, or like the snow covered Grandes Mountains. But even then, your beauty is more than that. So, the second stanza, the poet is talking about how he had already arrived at the port and he's watching over the ship, magnificently entering into the port without making any errors and anchoring like a queen. And already we can see the awnings spread over the ship deck and the mast are completely empty now without the white sails. And he's also comparing or contrasting the beauty of the magnificent ship to the forming reef, to the feathery palm trees, and to the snow capped Grandes Mountains. But beyond all that beautiful sights, we can still see the magnificent ship standing right at the port. But the third stanza, we can see a clear twist of the imagination of the poet, of the narrator, because And now he's explaining that, but even then, and yet, you are unhailed and nameless. There are no names written on you, and you are unhailed. No one is going to praise you. No one is around me to give respect, to pay tribute to you, to pay respect to you. I'm not really sure by imagining, by aiming a fancy, I'm rightly attributing you with a joyful purpose or a blameless courage and with a clear sense of direction. Maybe I'm just imagining. I'm not really sure if you're special after all. But even if you're not special, but I can every time assure you that, but for all I have given thee, beauty enough is thine. But beauty, your appearance, what your magnificent appearance and your beauty is more than enough. Even if you haven't have a joyful purpose or a blameless courage or a clear sense of direction, I can assure you that your beauty is more than enough. As though aslant means it from an angle, we can very well clear that with trim, tackle, and shrouding. All these are mechanical techniques that are used in a ship. With all those technical intricacies, I can assure you that from the prow's line, from the very front part of the curve, the ship's curve, it is very clear that we can see you. We can uh, pay tribute to your beauty, because in the offing scatterest form from a very far away distance we can see your white sails crowding, and you're slowly progressing, or you're magnificently approaching towards the port, which means that your appearance is more than enough, your beauty is more than enough. Even when maybe I was just imagining or attributing you with a joyful purpose and a blameless courage and a clear sense of direction. Maybe you're devoid of all these attributes because you're unhailed and nameless. Maybe there is nothing special after all. But beyond all that, we can very well assure you that your beauty is more than enough, because from a very far away distance, we can see the white sails crowding. So the poet is talking about the splendid nature, the magnificent nature, the marvelous appearance of the ship, and imagining very well attributes to the ship, which may or may not be true. But even then, he's describing that. But beyond all that, the beauty of the ship is more than enough. So the first stanza, poet while watching the ship asks to which direction the ship is moving forward. He watches the white sails of the ship leaning across, which seems to give the idea that it may be going to the west. The ship appears fearless of the rising sea and the clouding skies. Poet wonders if winter covers everywhere with snow and hails. Will the ship be still gliding over the blue Pacific Ocean, or will be taking rest in the summer haven, the tropical lands, with its wide sails being rolled up? So these are the sails of a ship, the sheets of canvas that is attached to the mast of ship. In the second stanza, the poet has already arrived at the port, watching the ship entering the port without making any errors at all. He marvels at the way it anchors and spreads the awnings over the ship deck and empties the mast. While watching the grandeur of the ship, the poet also notices the forming reefs, snow covered mountain peaks, and feathery palm trees at a distance. But even placing along these sides of nature, the ship stood there, still upright and majestic. So, this is the anchor in a ship. These are the awnings, the sheet of canvas or other material stretched on a frame and used to keep the sun or rain off ship's deck. These are the maybe rock reef or coral reef or sand reef just above or below the surface of the sea. Beautiful sight. The third stanza took a twist turn when the poet realizes that yet being splendid, the poet is unhailed, not being praised by anyone, and nameless. He is now being confused of attributing these fanciful aspects like joyful purpose, blameless courage, and a right sense of direction to the ship. But even then, he emphasizes that beyond all these aspects, the beauty of the ship is more than enough. The mechanical techniques like trim, tackle, shrouds, prows lined, and so on describes the intricacy and complexity of the ship. The ship, being splendid and beautiful, is visible even from a very far distance with its white sails crowding all over. So, this is shrouding. So, these are all mechanical techniques that are used in a ship, which is very well familiar to people who are aware of the technicalities of the ship. This is the prow's line, pointed front part of the ship. So, generally, the poem Passerby, written by Robert Seymour Bridges, where the poet or the narrator witnesses the grand entry of a splendid ship towards the port where it lay down like a beauty. Poet wonders at the mechanical and technical devices of the ship, finally realizing that even though there might be nothing special about the ship, her beauty itself shines above all. So, that is the poem Passerby. Thank you all.